Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek Bible Study for the East Allen County Church of Christ. Tonight we're going to talk about that thing which we all seek, no matter who you are, no matter what nation you're from or going to or live in. We all care about this. Humanity, whether we're believers in Christ or not, we believe in this in the sense that we all seek this. And that, of course, is joy and peace in this world. Peace is actually an extension of joy. Peace is the ultimate extension of satisfaction. It is that thing that exists once I have attained what it is I say or think that I need. And so people spend a lot of time seeking out things in this world. What is it that brings us that ultimate peace? What is it that gives us joy? Philosophers for centuries have debated the summum bonum, that is the chief good. What is the highest good that can be achieved in life? What is it that if we had it, we wouldn't want anything else? We wouldn't need anything else. That would be it. That would be the ultimate. Jesus claimed to be the Christ, nothing less than the Son of God. And today, those who seek to reject Christ want to paint his believers as being people who are devoid of any kind of joy, any kind of peace, any kind of real fulfillment. And so the truth is obviously that that's not the case. In fact, Christianity brings just the opposite. Christians are often among the most satisfied people in this world because we know what's coming. And I don't mean that in some terrible, horrific, we know what's coming way. I mean that we understand that we're blessed, we're forgiven, and we're brought into the grace and fold of God through his love and through the blood of his Son, Jesus Christ. We don't have to spend our days worrying about what happens, what'll happen tomorrow. Well, maybe it's going to come. Maybe it won't. Jesus may come before then. I live in the understanding of what the Bible teaches, and that is that he could come at any moment. He could come at any time. I don't know when he'll come. I just know that I'll be glad when he does. If I'm gone and in a grave before he returns, he'll call and I'll come back. I can tell you this, when the Lord calls you, you're coming back, or you'll be here when he gets here. Either one of those will be the case. But the lifestyle of the Christian is one that is truly as good as it gets in this world. I know that there are people who believe that if you just have the right stuff, if I have enough financial security, they worship at the altar of the 401k or whatever it is that they have, that they think about in their future, that's going to bring them stability in some form or fashion. Maybe if I have the nicest home, or maybe if I just have this kind of a car, or if I wear these kinds of clothes, then everything will be what it should be. And what we find out in life is it doesn't matter what you have. If you're not satisfied with life, if you're not satisfied inside yourself, you're never going to be satisfied with anything outside yourself. And that's true of whatever. And the thing that gives us satisfaction internally is understanding and knowing about Christ and living a life that brings us into that relationship. The first point is that a quality life is really not possible without something inside of us, a quality character. It's just not possible. Luke 6 verses 43 and following says this: "For there is no good tree which produces bad fruit, nor on the other hand a bad tree which produces good fruit. For each tree is known by its own fruit. For men do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they pick grapes from a briar bush. The good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth what is good. The evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth what is evil. For his mouth speaks from that which fills his heart." One of the things I learned in traveling around the world is that you can find people living all kinds of lives, and they're in all kinds of states of economic position. Some I met were very, very poor people, and some I met were very rich. But you would think that if the world was right, then all the rich people would be super happy, and all the poor people would just be destitute, despairing, and that would be it for them. And that's why, and I'm not going to get too much into this politically, but a lot of people believe that that economics affects a person's ability to move forward. Life is not always about us having the same thing. In other words, it's not about you having everything I've got or me having everything you've got. Life is about living for God. And one of the reasons man fails so often in his own joy, in his own peace, is because he looks for it in all the wrong places. And you don't find it at the big box store or the BMW dealership or the real estate office. You're not going to find, you may find something that momentarily brings you happiness, but you're not going to find anything that's going to help you sleep at night. And one of the things that Jesus tells us in this, in Luke chapter 6, verses 43 to 45, is that a lot of our life that we experience is in how we deal with it. And I'm not saying that there aren't painful parts of life that you just need to laugh your way through. We're entitled to our emotions and our feelings, and I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that there are some people who will be dissatisfied no matter what they have. And they will never be, and if they think, they live their life believing that if I just have what someone else had, then I'd be fine. If I had all that person's money, if I was as rich as Bill Gates, I could be happy too. That's doubtful. If you had as much money as Bill Gates, you'd be you, but you'd have a lot of money. That's it. That, believe it or not, there are people of wealth and people of society who seem to do well, should be doing well, but who in fact find themselves living horrid existences and barely making it through. They have all the money they could have. They have enough money to buy anything they want, but they're intrinsically unhappy and dissatisfied with life. And so they are people filled with trouble. In James 1 and verse 27, pure and undefiled religion in the sight of our God and Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. There is a positive and a negative side to your faith. And I want to tell you that there are some Christians who are dissatisfied with their faith, not because of the body of Christ they find themselves in, not because of the preacher, not because of the elders, not because of the leadership of the church. They're dissatisfied with life because, and it's hard for them to come to this conclusion or admit this, but they're dissatisfied with themselves. They read verses like this and they say, well, I see what James is saying and I see what he's pointing out, but I don't have time. Well, then you don't have time to be fulfilled. If you can't, and the thing about widows and orphans here is not to specifically focus only on widows and orphans. It is to say that the height of my spiritual ability and being is when I'm reaching out to others, particularly those who are in need. And what some of the most dissatisfied people are some of the most conservative, and I say conservative, I'm talking about economically, and I'm not talking about the political definition of this, okay? I'm talking about people who believe, well, if I hold on to everything I've got, I never share it with anybody, I never give anybody anything, then I'll have all that I'm supposed to have. And the fact of the matter is that if we hang on to what God gives us and we don't share it, we don't do with it what He gave it to us to do with. When I have something, I don't have it so that I can hoard it. I have it so that I can share it. I have it so that I can help other people. I have it so that I can do something. And if you read the book of Romans or Corinthians, when Paul talks about why these people struggled with their spiritual gifts, it was because in part they were holding up their spiritual gift and they were saying, see what I can do. Well, first of all, you couldn't do anything if God didn't let you do it. And the second question is, if God lets you do it, if He gave you that skill, if He gave you that ability, then what are you doing with it? And if you're saying, well, I'm just doing this so that I can lift myself up, well, that's the problem with the world. The world wonders, about why some people have some things and other people have other things, or some people don't have things. That's really not the question. The question is, what are you doing with what you have? What are you doing with what you've got? Because if you're not satisfied with what you got, if you're not doing everything you have with what you have, it's doubtful you'll ever find a way to help other people, no matter how much you have. So we go on and we look at Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, and Paul gives us the answer to a very interesting idea. Therefore, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. How is it possible for a Christian to have a quality life when his external circumstances in the world might be unpleasant? Well, it's not just Christians. How does anybody do this? How does Paul, when he's imprisoned, write about things like joy and write about things of encouragement? When he's tortured he wants to be free. He wants to get out. He wants to preach the gospel. And yet he finds himself imprisoned and having all kinds of detrimental circumstances. And the one thing we don't find Paul doing is woeing, and what I mean by that is simply complaining. I know people who, it seems like no matter what they do, complaining is their first resort. They go to complain first. Well, I like this, but, can't you just say you like it and just leave it? Yes, there's always a but. There's always a shortfall. There's always a failing. There's always a flaw. And some people will find it no matter what they do. Paul gives us the answer about how to achieve an attitude that is really much better. He says, do not be conformed to this world. Don't let this world shape who you are. Don't let this world dictate your feelings and your circumstance, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, it's got to do something with our hearts and with our heads and how we handle the difficulties that we face. It's not always about what we face, because all kinds of people face things. I have been with all kinds of families in this world through terrible circumstances. I was with one family when they had just lost. They had 2 sons and they lost both of them in an outdoor accident. The only 2 children they had. And I sat there and I was with these folks and it's a big family. It was a lot of people, but it was this mom and dad, and they were dealing with things, and this grandfather came up to me, a gentleman who I'd spent some time with, quite a bit actually, and we became friends. This whole process took some time. I won't get into the details of it, but I'll just say this about that gentleman. Here was a grandfather who he felt really guilty about all that transpired and all that happened, and he started taking some of that guilt on himself. And I tried to remind him that when it comes to young men and they're listening sometimes, they'll do their own thing. They don't always listen to older adults who have much more wise advice and counsel. And so he and I were talking, and one of the things that came out of that conversation was the idea that he was going to make it through this. And he was going to make it because of God. He was going to make it because of what he knew. Now, this man's heart was torn out. I mean, if you're a parent, a grandparent, you can't imagine losing one, much less both of these children, and even more if that was all your children. They just suffered tremendously, and I was blessed to be with that man and with that family in a most horrid circumstance. They taught me a lot of things, and I hope that I helped them just a little bit make it through that process. But going on to say that Paul talks about the renewing of our mind. That old gentleman, that grandfather, did what he did, made it through that circumstance because of what he knew and because of what he decided to believe. And there are a lot of people in this world who will just tell you, oh, I just, blah, 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 and I'd handle it this way and I'd do that. You don't know how you'd handle anything until it comes. I've heard a lot of people talk about how tough they are, only to find out that when they face the real circumstance, they're not that tough. And I've seen people who are pretty meek and consider themselves not to be very strong, be some of the strongest people around. So you really don't know until the time comes exactly what will happen. But if my mind is set, if my mind is ready, then I can deal with some things, even tough things, in very strong ways. And that's what Paul means when he says, that we need to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. One last verse, Philippians 3:8. More than that, I count all things to be loss in view of the surpassing value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things and count them but rubbish, so that I may gain Christ. To gain Christ. In other words, what Paul is saying here to the Philippians is, it doesn't matter what we face as long as in the end I'm getting closer to the Lord. It doesn't matter what I face. And that's not to say that we won't be brought to our knees, tears flowing out of our eyes like rivers, It doesn't mean that we won't have pain. But by the way, whether you're a Christian or not, you're going to face that. Some people want to say that, well, Christians are miserable, blah, blah, blah. Well, humanity, living life is hard. It is tough. And for all the people out there wanting to give you answers, if you just send them a few bucks, they'll send you a product that will change your life. Well, I'm doubtful on that. I've seen a lot of products, unless that product is a Bible. They might send you a Bible, that might change your life. But that depends on how much you're going to incorporate into your life. What are you going to do with what God teaches you? What are you going to do with His wisdom? So I just want to encourage you that if you're looking for happiness and peace and joy in this world, it is with you. It is, if you're a Christian, you have everything you need. And you have the ability to look beyond the moment, no matter how terrible the moment may be, no matter how hard the moment may be. You can look beyond that moment and know that you belong to God and that you belong to Jesus Christ, and you have that eternal relationship to look forward to. If you're not a Christian and you're viewing this video and you'd like to understand how to become a Christian, I am more than happy to talk with you. Simply call the number that you'll see at the end of this video, and I'll be glad to speak with you, get in contact with you, and we can talk about your relationship with God. If you are a Christian, you are most blessed and you are most loved. And I hope you know that if you're not a Christian, you're certainly loved. And so we're here at the East Allen County Church to hopefully be a blessing to you. We want to encourage you to be what God calls for you to be. Again, if you have anything to ask, any questions or any needs, please call us at the number you see at the end. God bless you, and I hope you have a wonderful week.